So yeah, I just talked a little bit about the syllabus, mostly the same, but some changes that happened after spring break. Problems, you'll still need to do problems. You'll just be doing them through Mcgraw-Hill Connect software. Again, the way I've set up the problems is that there are almost unlimited tries. You can do them over and over. You'll have to go in there and try them to see what I mean. But basically, I made them as the least restrictions as possible, so you can keep practicing. And the nice thing about doing them through McGraw-Hill Connect is you get feedback very often. However, you have to enter them into the system, which takes a little bit more time. Maxwell asked a question. We'll be able, for exams, so you can see the exams will be timed, unlike the homework assignment. So the question was, will we be able to schedule a different time if we don't have internet access at that time? If you have technological limitations of any kind like that, please let me know as early as possible. And that way we can schedule or figure out some type of different thing. But generally, I'll try to have everyone do them at the same time, our normal lecture time. So I hope that helps, Maxwell. Yeah, let me know. So basically, if you're having any technical issues, just send me an email and we can always get on Zoom just like we're doing now. And I can do it one-on-one with you if you need help getting things going. So in terms of, when it comes to dates, these dates still stand to some extent in terms of dropping with the W April 3rd. However, you have gotten emails that there have been like alterations and all kinds of exceptions happening at the state level. And that's still in development, the state deciding what to do. But generally, let me know if you're having any difficulties of any kind, or if you're thinking of dropping because of the move online. Let me know so we can talk about your situation in detail. Okay. These are all the same, the course objectives, the required materials, these were all required for the beginning. What's new is the technology requirements. So this is a section I want you to read very, very carefully. So there will be some technological requirements, but I have checked, that the ability for you guys to use Mcgraw-Hill Connect on mobile devices, for example. It is possible. It's not a great experience. I think the better experience is on the personal computer, but you'll need a mobile device or personal computer for access to Canvas. I want you to be looking at Canvas regularly. The Connect software, you do have to register for that. So far, I have 9 people out of 13 that have registered. If you have not yet registered, you want to do that as soon as possible so that you can get started on the practice problems, and also so that you will be ready for the exam next week. Now, for the exam next week, because you guys are still learning how to input answers in there, I'm going to make sure the next exam is only multiple choice questions. So that all you have to do is click on the right answer. So you should be able to have a piece of paper beside you, write out what you want, but in the end, just choose your answer. Now, again, the questions are going to be somewhat randomized. So the numbers will be slightly changed depending on who's getting the question. Also, the order of the questions will be different. So it will not be possible to send someone an answer or get an answer from somebody, really, because your questions won't be exactly the same, but they'll be very, very similar. They'll just be a little bit randomized so that cheating is not really possible. The access to Mcgraw-Hill Connect is absolutely free. So as you guys saw in an earlier announcement, I gave you the online access code where you can access it for free. And then for lab assignments, as you're going to see when I show you the lab assignments, you'll need either a PC with Word or Excel, and you can get those for free. I put a link to the Microsoft website where you can get those. I'll show you where that is. Or you will need a printer and some type of mobile device so that you can print the lab assignments, write on them, and then take a picture or scan them and then upload them. And I'll show you how to do that. So any questions, any other questions here on the technology requirements? I don't know, some of you may be typing a question or whatever. That's totally fine. I'll definitely answer your question as it comes in. Or just if you have a question at any time, just say something. It's just, this should be, you know, for the most part, just like a regular lecture. You can talk to me whenever you want. You can talk to everybody, say your question out loud, and I can answer that. Or you can type it. Can we scan and upload labs that we still have? So the question was, yeah, if there are some experiments that some of you may not have turned in. I noticed that, especially experiment 13. So yeah, so you can upload those. For experiment 13, I'm going to provide a special place for you to upload it because so many people, I only got like 3 of those because you guys were still working on them. But for the rest, if you take pictures of them or scan them, just email them to me and I'll put the scores in. I'll grade them and put the scores in. But for experiment 13, I'll have a spot for you to upload them. And the question is, will we be having, another question Stephanie asks is, will we be having labs on Zoom? I will want you to meet or at least watch the video of what I do at the beginning of labs. So when it comes to lectures and labs, I'm glad all of you are here today for the first lecture. And I think it's good that you continue to come to lecture at lecture time. However, if, for example, you don't have the internet at lecture time or you don't have the internet at lab time, everything that I do here, I'm going to be recording, and I'm recording right now, and I'll be uploading that to my YouTube channel. And so you'll have access to that. And I'll be including a link to your playlist on my YouTube channel right after after I upload this video that we're doing right now. Okay. So yes, we're doing all of our meetings on Zoom, but in terms of lab, I'll basically do a pre-lab lecture like I usually do in the first 15, 20 minutes. But then I'll basically leave you guys to do the lab, and I'll probably just be sitting here and be available, grading stuff or doing whatever.
A question about FEMA. Ron Fauna weeks ago here had suggested that FEMA would be a better way to handle the response to coronavirus than using the Fed and Congress and so many others. Could a beefed up FEMA in the future be a way of responding in terms of money, getting to people's doors, not having to go through the traditional banking system, you name it, in terms of disaster relief for a pandemic?
I think we still need the supplemental, but what we could have done, FEMA, and this is what I had talked about before, is what I still believe.
I feel like are we getting audio for a different meeting?
Ability to get money to states quickly. And I think if we had states more guidance as issued the direct.
So yeah. So I think, yeah, okay, we were getting audio for a different room for a moment, but anyway, yeah. So we'll do our labs that way. I'll show you the thing for lab for just a moment. So what I wanted to get to though was points. So you can see the number of points for exams has been reduced slightly. So the first 2 exams were 100 points. Those will stand, the first exam rather. The remaining 3 exams will be 80 points. And they'll be done on Mastering Chemistry or McGraw-Hill Connect rather. For the quizzes, I'm not going to have quizzes that are online. I think it's just too short of a time period to restrict you guys to. So what I'm doing instead is I'm doing a lot of assignments. So lab will be less points as well. The final exam, instead of 200, it'll be 120. What's increased here is homework and assignments were 0 points before, but now they'll be 260 points. So what this means is that this will be a huge boost to on your road to 1,000 points. And the normal chemistry department proviso of lecture points and exam quiz points, it will no longer be applied. So I imagine that this is going to be quite a big boost to your points. No, all the labs will be worth the same. So I'll go down to the lab section in just a moment, but your old labs, everything that's already done, the points have not changed. What I did was basically I took points out of the future exams and the future quizzes and the future final exam and some from the lab. And because we're going to be doing fewer labs a little bit, a couple fewer days of lab, and the lab final will be worth less. and I put those all into assignment points. The homework, yeah. So all the homework and assignments will be in Mcgraw-Hill and Connect. And when you do them, it should be very easy for you to get all the points. If you're having any technical issues at all answering the questions, or you're not getting close to all the points and you're doing the assignments, let me know right away. All I need for you to do is basically do those homework assignments and enter the answers into the Mcgraw-Hill Connect software, and you will get the points. And the way I've set up the homework and assignments is that you should have unlimited attempts. You should be able to attempt it over and over and attempt the questions over and over until you get them right. The lowest 2 labs will still be dropped, yes, regardless. So basically all I did was I took points out of exams and quizzes and some out of the future labs, and I put them all into homework assignment points. And these should be points that are almost gimmies. They should be essentially free points as long as you do the stuff, which I think will have everyone will be quite happy with the impact that has on the grades. So the homework assignments, I've actually already prepared them and I'm building them into Canvas. And so I've already prepared them in Mcgraw-Hill Connect. They'll essentially be due at the end when I finish lecturing on the chapters. So I have due dates for chapter 17 and 18 already, but for the future assignments, I'll be assigning those essentially as we get to each chapter, maybe a little earlier. So you'll always have at least a couple weeks to finish. So for example, your assignments, I'll go to which assignments you have now, but you've got 2 weeks to finish the ones I've put up. And I'm thinking, actually, I think I'm going to extend the homework, chapter 18 homework due date a little bit because there's a lot of questions in there. For extra credit, I will be offering extra credit assignments on Mcgraw-Hill Connect as well. The Student Success Center is shut down. The workshops are shut down. I'm not having office hours anymore. All of these points, there's no way to get these points really. So the campus suddenly closed, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer you some generous extra credit in Mcgraw-Hill Connect. So that should even boost your scores further. So this is going to be the new breakdown of the points. Again, a lot of these points are going to be in assignments that I expect any of you guys that complete them should be able to get at least 250 of these points. Then exam 1 has already been decided. Exam 2, 3, and 4 will be coming up. Quizzes, these have already been decided. These are your quizzes from before. And all the future exams, 2, 3, 8, 4, and the final will be done through Mcgraw-Hill Connect. So extra credit for, I do have this Post-it note. I was able to get that for the extra credit for those of you guys that came to office hours. But when it comes to 2 hours that were spent in workshops and tutoring, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get that anymore because the campus is closed. So I depend on a report from that department. So I cannot guarantee that you'll get extra credit points for hours that you were in tutoring. If there's a way for me to retrieve those records before the end of the semester, I'd be happy to add those in. But for now, I don't have assurances that I can get those, unfortunately. The grading scheme is the same as before. 900 points is an A, 800 points is a B. And I think that you'll find that getting, in general, because of the huge, basically free points you're getting here, as long as you do the assignments, I think you'll find that getting the grade that you were looking for will be easier probably than it might otherwise have been. But making sure that you learn will be more up to you because I can't be there making sure you do your work, basically, unfortunately. And so it's important that when you get stuck and you're having trouble that you let me know, because I can't be watching you over your shoulder while you're doing it and know, like when we do an exam review in lab, I'll walk around and look and say, oh, you know what, the way you did that part was wrong. And so I cannot do that. I can only go in to Mcgraw-Hill Connect and see how much progress you've made. That's the best that I can do. So it's up to you to really communicate with me. Now, I'm not too scary, right? Just make sure to ask me questions. I know you'll have a lot of questions as we move forward. I'll be here, I'll be available. And we can always set up something like what we have right now anytime. Just let me know. Like I'm just gonna be sitting in front of my computer, grading things and doing stuff, just like if I was at work, except I'll be more. The ACS exam, that's a very good question. So the ACS exam, as if we look back at the schedule here, the department has decided to not do the ACS exam. So it's because we are not legally allowed to distribute the ACS questions. Now, the ACS is coming up with an alternative exam that is for online because of what's happened here. But as a department, we just decided we're not going to do the ACS exam this time. So that's not something you have to worry about. It'll just be a regular final exam. Yeah. And then for labs. So for labs, so what we've gotten up to today was all of this column, the first one, experiment 21, we got all the way to experiment 13. So the labs that are remaining are going to be 8, 20, 12, 10, 11, 15, 19, and so forth. So that's going to add up, instead of adding up to, it'll add up to a slightly fewer number of points. There'll be 220 possible lab points altogether, which includes the lab final, which is worth 20 points. Okay, so there'll be fewer lab points than before. So all the labs you've done before were 10 points, and they will be 10 points. Now, how is it that you're going to deal with all these assignments? Well, first of all, for those of you guys that are not already in Mcgraw-Hill Connect, you definitely want to click this button here and set up your account. Use that free online code that I provided. Now, it's best if you do this through Canvas and use your campus email. So here's the instructions. Please follow these instructions. You can download the instructions right here in either PowerPoint or PDF version. Please follow these instructions. I know 9 out of the 13 of you have already done this. If you haven't, make sure to do it as soon as possible. That's your homework for tonight. First thing, you want to be doing that. Now, if we go back to the home, there's also free student access to Microsoft products. So if I click this button, I just go into my account, which was made using my, let's see, show my account. It's made using my school email. If you make an account using your school email, you will get free access to all these programs, Word, Excel, and so forth. And so you should do that as well. So this is the kind of stuff you need to do to prepare for going online. They're right here. Register for Mcgraw-Hill Connect. Use the free access code I gave you in the announcement about this. Get free access to Microsoft products. Okay. And make sure to read this syllabus that I provided you. Now, in terms of assignments, so if you go into the module, I've still got my slides here that I'll be using. Here are the assignments from Mcgraw-Hill Connect. Okay. Now, when you click on these, this will take you straight to the assignment. It usually pops out. And this is just showing me, how many students have already started this. So these are where a lot of your points are going to come from. Now, I do want to show you something. Going back to the home here, I also assigned a video about the answer palette video assignment. There are 2 videos. You're going to want to watch that. That'll give you more detailed instructions about how to enter things using their answer palette, as they call it. But I'm going to show you something specifically for the Chapter 17 homework right now. because I found this to be a bit tricky, putting it in. So let's say we're on question. Oh, yes, you have an access code. It's available. Yeah, just go ahead and put that in. It wasn't available at first. Maybe when you first registered, it took them a little bit to get it to me, but then they finally did get it to me. So actually, sorry, the question I was looking for, I think, was in the chapter 18 homeworks. I just wanted to quickly show you how you can enter an equilibrium constant expression, which you're going to have to do quite a few times. So when it comes to your exams, okay, your questions will be kind of like, you know, they'll be check that apply or multiple choice, just because I don't want to deal with entry problems, at least for exam 2. And so which is an areneous acid? Oh, it would be HI. Correct. So some of them have more than one choice here. Some of them, now we'll talk about what an areneous acid means in a moment, but some of them will have entries like this, where you have to put in a Ka, for example. So the Ka, okay, if we're talking about the Ka for something, we're gonna start talking about this today. This means the K for the reaction where, like HCN here, is going to act like an acid. So what we're going to say is when things act like an acid, that means they give up an H+ ion. So this thing is made of H+ ions and cyanide ions. And so the K for this reaction is called the Ka of HCN. Okay, so we want to put in the K for this reaction. Now, when we do that, we're going to have to use this answer palette. So the order you want to do this in, I think, is if you're going to have a fraction, I find it useful to hit fraction first. There's going to be a fraction, right? Products over reactants. The products are going to be these guys. So I would type in like a bracket and then an H, and then you've got two options here. You can hit the superscript key right away and put in your plus. Whoops, I put in equals plus like that. Then you can press the arrow to the side. So I'm going to press the side arrow and it leaves that superscript. And then you can close the bracket like that. Oh. And you can use arrows to kind of move around here. Now open another bracket for the cyanide. This is the way I like to do it. I like to go CN, press my minus, close my bracket. Then I like to go back and select what I want to be the superscript. I hold shift and press the arrow and then go like that. Either way is fine, okay? And then you got, the superscripts are really exaggerated so you can really see that they're superscripts and not on the same line. And then the next one would be HCN, close the brackets. So that's the way you want to do it if you want it. Okay, so even for me, it said, oh, you put it in wrong. Oh, you did something wrong, right? And it doesn't even really give you that good of a feedback. So this is kind of going to be some issues that we run into. I mean, I even put this in earlier. So I'm not really sure. I did this earlier to make sure that, oh, you know why? Okay. So sometimes this guy is a little bit inflexible in the way that it wants to take your answers. So here it said in water. And as we're going to see in lecture, there are actually two ways to write this thing. The other way we can write it is with water. So if I erase or I'll just write it down here. So the other way to write this is to say HCN which is aqueous, plus water. And we'll see these two ways of writing these for acids in a moment. And equilibrium. And then we get 8Cn minus, and instead of H plus, we call it H3O plus, which is hydronium. And so that's the way it actually wanted me to write this. So what that means is that it wanted me to call H plus H3O plus instead. So I'm going to click back in here and say H subscript 3. Then I press my arrow to the side to get out of subscript, and then O. And that's what it wanted me to enter instead. So you might, run into issues like this. Read the problem carefully. Now it says correct. Okay. Yeah. How do I get the book on there? Oh, how do you read the textbook through? Is that what your question is, Madison? How do I read the textbook through Connect?
Oh, no, how do you get the textbook with the, like, say you're doing the homework problems or whatever? How do you get the textbook to look back for the examples?
So you want to you're talking about reading the textbook, or?
Yeah. Are you able to, are we able to do that while we work on the homework, or is?
Oh, I see. If you have a physical copy of the textbook, you can of course have it next to you. You can read the textbook through the internet. So you could, depends on your situation, right? If you're doing it on a tablet, it'll be a little bit more difficult because you won't have like a lot of real estate to put stuff. But I've basically been assigning you the reading assignments here. You'll see those on Canvas as well.
Okay.
And so those have the textbook in there as well.
Yeah, I'll do this on a laptop.
Yeah, all of this will be easier on a laptop if you guys do it on a laptop. It is possible to do it on mobile devices, but it seems like it's going to be a little bit painful. It's a little bit painful, right? But it's going to be quite painful doing it only on laptop devices. Yeah, so it has the textbook here. In fact, I think you can go, and I can put all these up too, all reading assignments, so you guys could read any part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have access to the textbook here.
Oh, cool. All right. Thanks.
I don't know if there's an easier way of accessing the textbook than these Learn Smart assignments.
Would we press on ebook right there underneath your underneath section info? Would we press on that, or would it just be?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not seeing it. Is there ebook? Something that says ebook?
Yeah, it's underneath. Okay, you see where your name is under the section info? Okay, so underneath there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Do we go there for the?
Yeah, that will take you to the, so it takes you to the same thing.
Oh, to the same thing, okay.
So I'll assign the other chapters too, just so you can access them. I can assign all the chapters for 0 points. Yeah, okay. You can always split the screen. So if you guys don't know this too, if you're trying to do two things at once on the screen, if you press the Windows key and left or right, it will automatically split the screen for you. So so now I've got them in half, right? And I can do that. So if you're working off a laptop or something, you could very easily put the window to one side or the other by pressing the Windows key and an arrow.
Windows key and arrow.
You can even put it into fourths like that. I have a fourth of a window.
You said both left and right arrow with the Windows key?
Yeah, so right now I'm holding the Windows key. Right now I'm holding the Windows key. If I click left, it goes on the left side. If I click right, it goes on the right side. If I click up, it goes into the top right corner. So you can move it around like that if you hold the Windows key. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm holding the Windows key and using arrows. So that's an easy way to do that.
Oh, that's cool. So question, why are there only two, it looks like 2 topics for the textbook? What are those? Are those chapters?
Yeah, those are the chapters. So going back to our assignments, let's do this all through.
Okay.
So I assigned you these videos here. No points, just go and watch them so you know what to do. And then I assigned a small number of points to this reading assignment.
Okay.
Maybe I should have put 0 points on that, but at least these ones, I guess they'll be 5 points. If you're having trouble getting these 5 points, let me know. I think if I'm going to put all the chapters up, I'm just going to make them all 0 points, the reading assignments. But I'll give them a due date, the chapters that we're actually doing. So right now they say May 22nd, but I'll give them a due date that's closer to, the time when you should have them have finished reading this. So chapter 17, you should have been already well into that before we left. We were basically done with chapter 17. Chapter 18, we're just starting.
Okay.
So these links should take you straight to the textbook. So if I click them right now, it takes me straight into this textbook thing. I'm going to get rid of my annotations here. I still have those up. Okay, yeah, and it will take you straight in. So I'm clicking preview. This is what it'll look like for you. You'll just go straight into this online textbook. Oh yeah, the Magda says the new iPads can split the screen as well, the fancier ones. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So if you have a fancy iPad, you can. Yeah, the new iPads are pretty good. But yeah, you can read the book this way if you don't have the physical copy.
Okay, yeah, I don't.
Now, it's doing this weird thing where it says the text is dim because it is less relevant for you to study. If you click it, that goes away. I don't know why it's doing that. I haven't figured that out yet, but you should just read. I mean, unless there's a section of a chapter I tell you not to read. You basically.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, and so these are your assignments, and you can see their point values. You can see when they're due. This is the assignments tab. Now, what about lab assignments? So here's experiment 8. So in experiment 8, I have instructions. I tell you to download the experiment 8 online version. So I've written up an online version over the past week for all of the experiments we're going to do till the end. And I'm going to put those also in the modules in the right time frame. So the modules gives you the kind of like chronological order. There will be usually YouTube videos or some simulation in there. And in lab today, I'm going to show you how to deal with the simulations. We're going to use this one's called Chem Collective. But yeah, you'll read the write-up, and I'll go back to the home here where the modules are. And you'll see that I have next set up for April 8th or April 6th is going to be when we do the experiment. It's April 8th is the due date. So generally the labs will be due in the next lab period, just like they normally would be. Now, if you're a student, so I'm going to show you the student view. So you guys are students. So here's what you're going to see. So you go down, you say, oh, okay, I've got to do experiment 8 next. Okay. So I click on that. Well, first of all, going back, this is the actual experiment write-up itself. So you click on that document and you download it. Now I gave you a Word doc, so that if you want, you can write directly into this. You could type directly into these tables and write directly into this and upload it that way if you want. There's also pre-lab. You have to do the pre-lab as well, just like a normal lab. So it's just the same as experiment 8 is in your textbook or in your lab manual. But the difference is that instead of actually doing the experiment, there's an online procedure, which generally involves either watching videos or doing some type of simulation. So this one has a series of several videos to watch.
So this one, so we actually don't really need to print it out. We could just upload it. You said type in there and upload it.
Yes. So
Okay.
if you want to type it in and upload it, you can do it that way. If you don't want to do that because you don't want to use Word or whatever, or typing in equations, I'm going to be showing you how to type in equations today in our lab section. If you don't want to do that, you can just write on it if you have a printer and then take a picture. So either way is possible. And that's specified in the syllabus. Okay. Now, for grades, so you'll notice that the stuff from Mcgraw-Hill Connect is already in there. The other stuff, like your lab scores, I posted those yesterday in the Unit 0. So your lab scores are here. This is all the stuff that happened before we moved online. So what I'm going to do is I'm working on taking those and converting them into all these scores into Canvas. So soon, not yet, but soon, all of your grades will be copied over to the grade section of Canvas. So if you see weird things happening in there over that period of time, it's because I'm still building the Canvas gradebook. For now, until I tell you otherwise, your old scores will still be according to your secret number as I was posting them before until I finish the Canvas gradebook. So they're right here, your old scores from before the break. Okay. Anyone have, and that's it basically for how the class is going to run. I was going to start lecturing on chapter 18 a bit. I'll probably do that at the beginning of lab a little bit too. And then I'll have another little lecture on lab stuff and how to deal with typing into Word and doing the lab simulations that we're going to do. So before I move on to chapter 18, does anyone have any questions? What time? So generally, everything for lab and lecture will be happening at that time. And as for our first lecture today, I scheduled it through this tab Confer Zoom right here. It says, oh yeah, because I'm in student view. So I did it through here, but I found that it makes a new link every time I do it that way. So in the future, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do all my lectures through my own Zoom room, and it will always be the same link. So you just come in at the same time, click the same link. I'm going to get rid of this Confer Zoom thing right here soon, and I'll just say at the regular lab time, press this button, and you'll get to something like this. So I'll try to make it as simple as possible. This is not as simple. Yeah. Just use the syllabus as your guide of when we're going to meet. And every time we're supposed to meet in person, instead we will meet on Zoom. However, if you can't come to lecture for some reason, okay, because of some internet issue or whatever, I will be uploading everything we do in here online. So if you don't come into lecture, it will be up to you to watch the video. And that's lecture and lab stuff. Other questions? So yeah, we'll start lab at 1 o'clock like we normally would. Okay. So now let me show you what things are going to look like for a lecture. I don't have much time to lecture today. I figured I would use up a lot of it with questions and just helping you guys get started. But now I'm going to show you what the lectures will look like. So So let me switch over to lecture mode. And lab, yeah, lab will also be recorded. That's right. Everything I do here will be recorded. Now at this point, it's not the right camera, I feel like. Oh, I know why. Okay. All right, so usually when we start lecture, I'll have it set up in a slightly different way where I'm standing. I have to close what I'm projecting right now. All right, and I have to project again, this time the lecture scene. All right. Okay. And now I open this. So this is usually how we're going to be starting. Yeah. So now I look really big and really close in. Now I have to share my screen. Share screen. Windowed projector screen. Share. From current slide. There. Okay. All right. And I'm going to move my mic.
We can't hear you, Dr. L.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is what it's going, and let me know if sound's an issue or whatever. I've got the mic hanging off the boom here. So I tested the sound and I tested everything out so I could give a normal lecture. So it'll be like you guys see me standing in front of the slides. I'll be able to point at things. I'll be able to walk across the room and point and do all kinds of things. In terms of writing, I won't be able to write as easily. I'd have to go back up here and do something, or I have a writing pad that I can use, but I don't know. I don't feel like it's that great of an experience. So what I'm doing instead is I'm going to just try to put PowerPoint animations that explain everything. That should be cleaner than most of my writing anyway. So, so for today's lecture, and as we move forward here, before the next exam, which does not include chapter 18, we're going to start talking about acid-base equilibria. That's going to be the main topic of the next 2 chapters. And so let's get started on that now. So when it comes to that bar is, I'm going to put the bar on the bottom so it doesn't block as much. So sound is not matching with the video. Well, that's strange. Yeah, the PowerPoints are up. They've been this PowerPoint has been up since before we ended last time. But I do see that sound is not matching with the video. Are you guys having a lecture experience right now or not? Any other problems? Anyway, I hope that, okay, it's working. Okay, all right, good. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to try to make as much of a normal lecture experience as you'd have had. And the PowerPoints are up, yes. So we're just going to start by defining what an acid is. So an acid has several definitions. The simplest definition is the Arrhenius definition, which just says that an acid is anything that when you put it in water, it makes H+1 ions or protons. And an Arrhenius base is anything that when you dissolve it in water will produce hydroxide ions. So basically metal hydroxides. Now, this is the simplest definition. It's actually not a very good definition because it's so limited. It's actually quite limited compared to the type of definition that we're going to use more often, which will be called the Bronsted-Lowry definition. So let's do that one there. Okay, so this is the one, this is the type of definition we're going to be focusing on, the Bronsted-Lowry definition. And so the Bronsted-Lowry definition is the same as the Arrhenius definition when it comes to acids. So an acid is anything that could produce an H+ ion when you put it in water. However, a Bronsted-Lowry base will be different. So a Bronsted-Lowry base doesn't necessarily mean that you have something that has hydroxide ions. Instead, it could mean that you have something, it could be any ion that would accept an H+, or any substance that would accept an H+. So in the example you can see here, I don't know if this is not going to work, but in the example you can see here, the B is going to be the H+ acceptor. So it's going to get an H+. The acid here will be the HA, that will be the H+ donor. And so when the B gets the H+, notice that it has an H, and also the charge moves up by 1 unit. It was 0 to start, but now it's +1 because it didn't just get an H atom, it got H+, which means it was basically lacking an electron. And then what's left of the HA is not just A, but A-. So we can see here, A- is what we have left. And this is because we didn't just lose H, we lost an H+. So you can see the H is gone there, but also the charge has dropped by 1 unit because an electron was left behind by the H+. Okay. I'm wondering if I can hide this bar. Sorry. I didn't think this would be as big of a deal, but hide video panel. Show video panel. Hide floating media controls. There we go. Okay. So that's a Bronsted-Lowry acid and base. Also related to this is the definition of so-called conjugate acid-base pairs. So the conjugate acid-base pairs are species whose formula differ only by 1 H+. So for example here, we could say that the BH+ is the conjugate acid of the base B because it's what you get after you add an H+ to it. And the A- is the conjugate base of the weak acid HA, the acid HA, because it's what you get after the A- loses an H+. So did anyone have a question about the Bronsted-Lowry definition of acid or base, or the Arrhenius? Okay, so that's all right. All right, so let's move on now to talking in a little bit more detail about acids and bases. So this is the same example I just showed, except now instead of just saying B for a base, we have the base being water. So what's interesting about water is water can act as both an acid or a base, either one. And and in this case, it's going to be acting like a base. And so so for the Bronsted-Lowry definition of a base, what does it mean the water is going to be doing? You could type or say.
What was the question?
So since water is going to act like a base in this reaction, what does that mean it's going to do? What do bases do according to the Bronsted-Lowry definition?
Accept hydrogen.
Accept hydrogen ion, right? Yeah, yes, accept an ion, yeah. We'll accept the H+ ion. So this water is going to be accepting an H+1 ion. And so that we'll see that's exactly what it does here in this reaction. So you can see that we have the acid here, the HA, that's going to be supplying the H+1 ion. And so here's the H atom. What it's going to do is it's going to be ending up leaving behind both these electrons that are in this bond. So it's going to be taking no electrons with it. It's just going to be an H+1 ion. At that point, it's going to bond to water via a coordinate covalent bond. The details of this, you don't need to know, you just need to know the water gets the H+. But what this means is that these two electrons will have to be used to make the bond. And so we can see now here in the case of the water, those 2 electrons were used to make the bond to the hydrogen. And now the water has accepted a hydrogen. And so the water has behaved like a base because it accepted the H+. And now the entire thing has a positive charge because it didn't just get H, it got H+. The hydrogen did not take any electrons with it when it left the acid. And so we're now 1 electron short. The shortcut way I say to remember this is that if you get an H+, you not only get the H, so now we go from 2 H's to 3, but you also get the plus. So your charge goes up by 1 unit from 0 for water, 0, no charge, to +1 for hydronium. And now, when it comes to the acid, well, remember, this H left as an H+, not an H atom. It did not take either of these 2 electrons with it. So the 2 electrons in this bond were left behind. They stay as a lone pair. So we can see that right here now. The lone pair is right there. And this extra electron that the hydrogen should have taken with it, it didn't. So the charge is now 1 unit lower. It's -1. So remember, when we lose an H+, we're not just losing H atom. We're basically, if we're adding an H+, we're adding a +1 charge. From 0 goes up by 1 charge unit to +1. When the H+ leaves, it leaves an extra electron. And so that leaves us with the charge being 1 less. So the charge of the acid was 0, it was neutral, and the charge of the conjugate base that is made when the H+ leaves is -1. The charge has gone down by 1 unit. Okay. So that is the transfer of electron, and that is the definition of conjugate acids and bases. So on your homework, I have several problems on identify the conjugate acid base. You can definitely expect that to be one of the exam problems. Questions on this example here? And you guys can interject at any time. I know there's kind of a lag or a delay probably for asking questions. That's okay. So that was what we call an acid dissociation. So when we write an acid dissociation equation, we want to show the acid, maybe water, and we show the water getting the H+, and we show the conjugate base of the acid after it has lost the H+. For a base, the base, as you guys mentioned before, is going to accept protons. And so our base in this case is going to be ammonia. And the water, we must write it because the proton that the ammonia is going to accept is going to be coming from water. And so we're going to write the water here. And this is going to be the proton. This time water is going to act like an acid. So that means it's going to be giving up the proton. Okay, and that's the proton it's going to give up. But remember, when it gives up the proton, or the H+, it's going to be leaving the 2 electrons behind. You might have already heard me use that word proton a couple of times. This is another way to say a H+1 ion. Because if we're talking about a hydrogen atom, how many protons does a hydrogen atom have?
One.
1, right? And 1 electron. Yeah, good. I see this typing, talking, that's great. 1, right? So if we make an H+1 ion, it loses that 1 electron. All that's left is a proton. Okay. So that's why we often call H+1 ions protons. And I'm going to call them that a lot, because that's just what most people get used to calling them. But anyway, so ammonia is the base, NH3 is the base. It's going to be accepting the proton. The nitrogen with its lone pair is what's going to make the bond to the proton. The water is going to be giving up the proton. In the process, these 2 electrons will be left behind. So that's what we see here. So the electrons that were in this bond to the hydrogen and water, those were left behind when the H+ left. And so now there's an extra electron. Remember, when we lose H+, our charge goes down by 1 unit from 0 here down to -1 right here. Now the NH3 is going to gain an H+. So these 2 electrons here will be used to make a bond to this hydrogen. And so now you can see that we have 4 of them here. And those 2 electrons that were on the nitrogen are now used to make the bond to the hydrogen. But also the charge goes up by 1 unit to +1 because we gained an H+. So we went from 0 charge here, gained an H+, go to +1 charge. So don't forget the charges when you write these. Okay, so question for the base.
Does it depend on the, I guess, like how it's written out, how that water reacts as an acid or base?
It depends on what is in the solution. So ammonia, as we'll see, a lot of molecules that have nitrogen atoms in them, they like to accept a proton right here where the nitrogen atom is. So when you see a nitrogen atom in a compound, usually you're going to think it's base, and I'll show you quite a few examples of that. When it comes to acids, the way you'll recognize that something is an acid, it will give the proton to the water instead of the water giving its proton to a base, is that you'll have an H written in front. So we would write this as HA or H something. So that's indicating an acid. So when you have an acid and you put it in water, it's going to be the water that gets the proton. And so basically that's, I think what you're asking is kind of a question of how to identify. Is this going to act like an acid or a base? It will generally act like an acid if you have an H in front of it, like HA or H something written. You'll recognize that you have a base when it either is a hydroxide, it has a hydroxide, or it has a nitrogen atom in it, like NH3. Did I answer that question, or did you want to follow up?
No, that answers it. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, the way you'll recognize acids is that in the formula they have H written in front. The way you'll recognize a base is either it has hydroxide in it, or if it's a weak base, they'll have nitrogen. And we'll talk about what it means to be a strong base, strong acid, weak base. You probably learned some of this in Chem 101 or Chem 150 too, but we'll be going into much more detail about the equilibria in this class.
Is water always going to be part of it?
There is one exception, and I'll show you as we do some problems. If hydroxide is being directly made, it's usually easier not to write the water. But otherwise, when you're dealing with a weak acid or weak base, you could always write the water or choose not to. I'll write on the slide here if I can in a moment to show you the other way you could write this. But you can always include the water unless it's a hydroxide base. And so we'll have a few examples of that, and I'll talk about them when we're doing them. But in general, the acids and bases can be compared based on their strength. So Liana had a good question about, like, how will I know basically if the proton will be given to the water, or the water will give the proton? It has everything to do with basically how strongly these things want to hold on to the proton. So how much does the water want to grab the proton compared to the acid that might give the proton? And so in this case, we have an acid HA, and the reason why it's an acid is because it holds on to the H plus less strongly than water would. And so water will get this proton and make H3O plus. The HA will lose the proton, and remember, when you lose a proton, the charge goes down by 1. So HA loses a proton, makes A minus. H2O gains a proton, and not only has an extra H, also the charge goes up by 1 unit to H plus. And so if we had equal amounts of the reactants, how do we know what will happen? The stronger acid and the stronger base will go and produce the weaker acid and the weaker base. And a big part of this chapter will be defining basically what makes an acid strong or weak, what makes a base strong or weak, and what kind of numbers will we use to demonstrate the strength of an acid relative to another. Now at that point, I think that I'm going to stop so you guys can take your normal lunch break. But I'm going to be back at the normal lab time. I'm going to lecture a little bit more on chapter 18 rather, and then I'll give you some pointers on how to deal with the lab. You could even start soon. You could start experiment 8 if you want to early. It's already available. But go ahead and take a break for lunch if you need it. We'll meet back here actually we're going to meet in my Zoom room. So I'm going to post another announcement that will give you the link to my Zoom room. I'm also going to put the link into Unit 0 so you can click it whenever you want. A lot of the times I'll just be sitting here anyway in office hours or whatever, and you'll be able to click that link and come to me. So go ahead and take a break. Let's meet back at like actually 5 after 1. Let's make it 5 after 1, just so you guys have enough time to take a break and eat or whatever. And I'll see you then, okay?
Okay, see you later.
See you in a bit.
I don't. And you mean